Today's video is all about the Nike Mercurial Vapor 11 versus the Vapor 12 versus the Flyknit Ultra versus the Flyknit Ultra. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com bringing you a three-way comparison between the now old Vapor 11, the brand new Vapor 12 Elite, and of course the limited edition Flyknit Ultra. These are all technically Nike Mercurial Vapors, but they're also distinctively different from each other. You could actually make the argument that the Vapor 11 and the Flyknit Ultra combined kind of make what is the Vapor 12 Elite. So we're gonna talk about what all the differences are between them, and I'll even give you my 1 to 3 rank based on what my personal favorites are. And if you're trying to decide which one to buy, the advice in this video should help you out tremendously. Also, if you guys enjoy the comparison series on this channel and perhaps want to see more, be sure to support this video with a like and let me know which comparisons you'd like to see down below in the comments of this video. Also, if you're new here watching for the first time and enjoying what you see, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. To start this video, I actually want you guys to vote for your personal favorite between these three boots. So there's going to be a little pop-up in the corner of the screen. You can go ahead and vote Vapor 11, Vapor 12, or Flyknit Ultra. The poll doesn't really mean anything, but I'm kind of curious to see which one people think is the best, or at least which one people would most like to wear. To start the comparison, let's talk about pricing and availability. Obviously, the Vapor 12 Elite is brand new. It retails for $250. It's been out for 2 months, and it will be available basically for the next 2 years in a wide variety of colorways. So getting them is not going to be an issue. However, it will be the most expensive option simply because it is the newest thing. The Vapor 11, because the Vapor 12 is out, is now discontinued. They haven't been producing these things for months. Stores still have them in stock. They are pretty deeply discounted depending on where you look. So you can actually get a really good deal on a shoe that normally retails for $230. If you can get a good deal on these, they definitely are worth it. And I wouldn't expect them to hang around in stores for too much longer. I would say within the next month or two, they'll likely be sold out everywhere. And as far as the Flyknit Ultra is concerned, it was a limited edition release. It sold out pretty much everywhere the first day that they came out. So you're not gonna find them for the $250 retail price anywhere at all. If you really want these, going on eBay and buying them from somebody reselling them is going to be your best bet. Just expect to pay over retail and be very careful because you don't want to accidentally buy a pair of Flyknit Ultras. The uppers of all three of these boots is probably the one thing that varies the most between them. You have Teijin synthetic on the Vapor 11, Flyknit with a grippy texturing on the Flyknit Ultra, and then a completely different variation of Flyknit on the Vapor 12 Elite. Assuming that the Vapor 13 won't be made from Teijin synthetic either, the Vapor 11 is now officially the last Teijin synthetic Vapor, a material we've seen on the upper of this line ever since the Vapor 3. So it's been around for a while and has of course evolved quite a bit over the years. One-piece construction that's consistent across all three of these models, but this Teijin synthetic is definitely the thinnest in comparison to the Vapor 12 or Flyknit Ultra. It's the truest rawest barefoot sensation of pretty much any Mercurial ever, in my opinion. It does have a little bit of a speed rib texturing to it that does add some thickness to the upper, not really any extra grip or something that you can feel on the ball, but basically no extra padding, very pingy sensation. And if you're just looking for that true barefoot sensation that we've come to expect from the Vapor line, this does that better than the other two models without question. The Flyknit Ultra, as the name would suggest, features a Flyknit upper, and this, in my opinion, is the most unique Flyknit upper we've ever gotten from Nike. It features speed rib texturing, a super thin Flyknit base with Flyknit speed ribs, but the surface of those raised edges actually has this kind of rough glue texturing to it that actually adds a pretty significant amount of grip on the ball. I kind of want to compare it to a Predator striking element, or maybe something like we used to get on the T90s, but without really any extra bulk. This still feels very, very thin. Definitely not as thin as what you're gonna get on the Vapor 11, and as we'll talk about in just a second, not quite as thin as the Vapor 12 either. Out of the three shoes in this lineup, this does have the most padded sensation, although I definitely think it's a stretch to say that this feels heavily cushioned on feet. It's still a thin, barefoot, pingy sensation on the ball, but I really do like this upper. In terms of just having that little bit of extra grip, that's something that personally I really like to have. So for that reason, this is my favorite upper of the three. Of course, with the upper of the Vapor 12, the controversial part is the fact that it is Flyknit. And really, this Flyknit upper is kind of like the happy medium of two shoes that were extremely well received, the Flyknit Ultra and the Vapor 11. It's like the Vapor 11 in that the upper is very, very thin, thinner than that of the Flyknit Ultra, despite basically being the same base Flyknit material. Especially once broken in and it softens up a little bit, it definitely does have a true barefoot sensation, very, very pingy. pretty much no extra padding whatsoever. It's not quite as thin as the Vapor 11 or past Vapors for that matter, but it comes very, very close, and in my opinion is still top-notch in terms of overall quality of feel that you would expect from a high-end Mercurial Vapor. It compares to the Flyknit Ultra in that it is actually a Flyknit base. So it does have a softness and that sock-like sensation that makes these shoes feel more natural and, in my opinion, more comfortable than any other Nike Mercurial Vapor that I've personally ever worn. They've modified the shape a little bit, whereas the Flyknit Ultra and Vapor 11 kind of have the same shape. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later in the video, but as a whole, I really like what they've done with the Vapor 12 and its Flyknit upper. I personally have no issues with it whatsoever. Now, unlike the Superflies, which feature a mid-cut, all the Vapors, including all three in this video, feature a standard low cut. The construction in the heel area of the Vapor 11 is pretty normal with a decent amount of padding, synthetic leather liner. I really have no issues with it at all. It gets the job done. The Flyknit Ultra is unique in that it's a low-cut Flyknit shoe. Almost everything from Nike that's Flyknit features a mid-cut design. However, despite looking kind of like a low-cut collar, the construction and overall fit and feel of this is like a traditional low-cut shoe. It just has this extended piece of elasticated Flyknit going around the edges that really has no impact on comfort or fit or feel or really anything for that matter. The internal liner is a synthetic leather, decent amount of padding. I actually prefer this heel construction over the Vapor 11. The heel area on the Vapor 12 is almost exactly like what we got on the Flyknit Ultra with a slightly deeper fit that I personally prefer. It still has that extension piece around the edges, a mock collar if you will. And then the heel liner also has a little bit more padding and is made out of a synthetic suede that I feel grips your heel a lot nicer. We've never seen this before on a Nike Mercurial Vapor, and of the three, I think the back heel area, including the liner, is the best. Something that was perceived by many as a major change when it came to the new generation of Mercurial Vapors, the Vapor 12 or the Superfly 6, is that the sole plate is now a split sole and the stud pattern was viewed as being drastically redesigned, when the reality is, yes, the split sole looks a lot different, but it's pretty much the same overall construction. It's all the same elements. And when you're talking about the firm ground stud pattern, it hasn't changed whatsoever. The Vapor 11 and Flyknit Ultra have the exact same sole plate construction. It's their new Nike plate technology that was introduced on the Vapor 11 and Superfly 5 initially. Obviously, it released on the Flyknit Ultra as well, where basically the tech is that it's a single layer of plastic rather than a layered sole plate that allows them to anatomically shape the bottom, which basically means that it's not a perfectly flat sole plate. It has a little bit of kind of a dip in it in the forefoot toe area and a little bit in the heel. So you sit slightly inside rather than on top of a flat surface, which makes for a much more dramatic difference in regards to responsiveness and the overall connected feel of the shoe in general, which is not a bad thing. It's probably my favorite aspect of these top-end Mercurials. As far as the stud pattern is concerned, it's their firm ground stud pattern. This was also new for this generation of Mercurial. All chevron bladed studs, extremely aggressive, and I would argue the most aggressive stud pattern on firm natural grass that money can buy. If you're looking for the ultimate as far as aggressive traction is concerned, the Mercurial line has always been kind of a go-to option. The Vapor 12, of course, features this split sole design that a lot of people just don't understand. There's still a sole plate that runs from heel to toe. You just can't see it. It's not exposed through the midfoot area. Instead, the material of the upper wraps underneath, which has absolutely nothing to do with the fit of the shoe. It's really just a cosmetic thing, and that sole plate is still the anatomically shaped sole plate, so it has all the same tech as what we had in the previous generation of Mercurials. Of course, since the sole plate is covered up, you still need to have studs. So that's where they introduced the split sole design. You have a stud plate at the heel and a stud plate in the forefoot. That holds the firm ground stud pattern or the soft ground or the AG stud pattern, depending on which one you go for. In fact, the Soft Ground Pro split sole variation is actually, as of right now, only available to pro players. If you want a Soft Ground Pro Vapor or Superfly right now, you actually have to buy the anti-clog version, which has a full-length sole plate. That's a completely different story. Really, the only difference you're going to find between this split sole and the previous generation Nike plate that we had on the Vapor 11 and Flyknit Ultra is that this feels slightly thicker because there technically is an added layer of material rather than it all being one piece. And overall, on feet, this just feels a little bit more solid to me, but that's only when you wear them back to back. It's not a super noticeable difference. It's not any stiffer. And if anything, I actually prefer the slightly more solid feel of this new split sole design. But as far as traction and overall performance is concerned, in my opinion, there's pretty much no difference whatsoever. Of course, these are all Nike Mercurial Vapors, and being lightweight is part of what the Mercurial line is all about. The Vapor 11 in a size 9 US basically the lightest Mercurial Vapor of all time, weighs in at 5.96 ounces or so. Very, very lightweight, both in hand as well as on feet. The Flyknit Ultra in a size 9 US weighs in at 6.3 ounces, so ever so slightly more, but not something I would say is really noticeable on feet whatsoever. The big difference between those two shoes is just gonna be the feel of the upper, because they are so drastically different, mainly in regards to the Flyknit Ultras just feeling a lot softer. And then of course the Vapor 12 in a size 9 US, they weigh in at 6.6 ounces. So if we're comparing the Vapor 11 and the Vapor 12, the Vapor 12 is technically half an ounce, 0.6 ounces heavier, which seems significant, but honestly, when they're on your feet, the weight is not something that, to me, strikes me as the big difference between the two. The fit, the feel of the upper, that's gonna be the more significant difference. Both of these shoes, in fact, all three of these shoes feel very lightweight on feet. So if you are trying to decide, they all feel light. I really don't think that weight should be a deciding factor here. Starting off with the Flyknit Ultra and Vapor 12 on feet, the two Flyknit options, I personally find the Flyknit upper more comfortable than the Tahitian synthetic upper on the Vapor 11, regardless of which one you want to talk about here. I definitely will say that out of the box, the upper on the Flyknit Ultra does feel softer and more flexible, but once broken in, give it a couple hours, honestly, the Vapor 12 upper feels pretty much identical, just with less padding in regards to touch on the ball. But the feel on feet is gonna be almost exactly the same once they're both broken in. As far as the shape and width is concerned, that's gonna be the big difference between these two shoes in regards to the comfort and fit aspect, in that the Flyknit Ultra has the same narrower, lower volume shape as the Vapor 11, whereas the Vapor 12, they've widened it up a little bit, they've increased the volume, which is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It really is more so a matter of personal preference there. For me, personally, based on the shape of my own feet, I just find the Vapor 12 to be more comfortable in comparison to the Flyknit Ultra. But everything else about these two shoes is gonna be pretty similar in terms of comfort and feel, especially once they're broken in. As for the Vapor 11 versus the Vapor 12, on feet, you're gonna notice two significant differences, and that is one, that they've changed the shape a little bit, where the Vapor 11 does have a tighter overall fit and a slightly lower volume feel as well. And then of course, the feel of the upper on your feet, given that they are so drastically different. They both have an anatomically shaped sole plate, so that feels pretty similar underfoot. I would make the argument that the heel lockdown is better and more comfortable in the Vapor 12 versus the Vapor 11. That's due to the difference in the liner as well as the slightly deeper fit. I think that's a big improvement. They're both one-piece uppers, so they wrap your foot very closely. I think if you don't like tight-fitting shoes, whether it's Vapor 11 or Vapor 12, probably not a great idea for you, because this is kind of a signature of this line. They fit really, really snug, but it's definitely safe to say that the Vapor 12, with its slightly new shape, is wider and also higher volume. Not to the point where I think this is so wide that they're gonna fit everybody, even if you have really wide feet, but definitely wider than what we had before, especially in the forefoot toe box area. Now, this is something that very much comes down to personal preference. For me personally, based on the shape of my feet, I find the fit, the feel, and the overall shape of the Vapor 12 to be a lot more comfortable. Like I said earlier, I feel like the Vapor 12 is the most comfortable Vapor that Nike has ever released. However, if you prefer that thinner, kind of tighter squeeze on your foot type sensation, then definitely you're gonna prefer the feel of the Vapor 11, but I don't think that the difference is so extreme that if you really like the Vapor 11 that you're gonna hate the Vapor 12, or if you really like the Vapor 12 that you're gonna hate the feel of the Vapor 11. They are still fairly similar, and you can definitely tell that they're part of the exact same line. So for me, I prefer the feel of the Vapor 12 on feet, but I wouldn't say that the difference is overly dramatic. And of course, as far as sizing is concerned, that has not changed. Both run true to size. So in conclusion, I want to say that there is no bad choice between these three boots. They're all absolutely fantastic, and I think you could make a solid case saying that these are three of the best speed boots of all time in terms of shoes that are light, thin, fit very tight, extremely responsive, offer really aggressive traction, all of those kind of key Mercurial characteristics. They all do those things extremely well. However, that's not to say that there aren't some significant differences between them. As far as how I would personally rank them, having a lot of firsthand experience with every single one, third place for me is the Mercurial Vapor 11. It's the tightest fitting of these shoes, which is not necessarily the way that I like my boots to fit. Also, I'm just not a huge fan of the speed rib texturing. To me, it just shouldn't be there. I would rather it be as thin as possible, completely smooth. But again, the shoe is very, very good. And if you're looking for the rawest barefoot sensation of these three, it's definitely the winner. at the 2 spot, and I had a really hard time deciding, but I did end up deciding on the Flyknit Ultra. And the reason why I really like the Flyknit Ultra is that upper with the grip element. Out of all 3 of these shoes, at least in regards to the uppers, the Flyknit Ultra would be my favorite. However, with the Vapor 12, which I put at the 1 spot, I really like what they've done with the way that the shoe fits. They've modified the shape, and the split sole, the more solid construction underfoot, just feels really, really good to me. I'm generally not a huge fan of wearing Nike Mercurial Vapors in general. It's not my style of shoe. I tend to prefer things that are a little bit more padded. And while none of these are padded at all, the comfort aspect of the Vapor 12, in my opinion, just surpasses both the Flyknit Ultra and the Vapor 11, which are both comfortable shoes, all things considered. So for me, number 1 Vapor 12, number 2 Flyknit Ultra, number 3 Vapor 11. But honestly, depending on your personal preferences, you could rank these in any order at all, and I wouldn't necessarily say that you're wrong. These are all absolutely fantastic options. Anyways, guys, that is it for me in this comparison. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. As always, if you have any questions at all regarding any of the boots that I talked about in this video, leave them down below in the comments and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. And also, if you have any suggestions for other comparisons you'd like to see on the channel, leave those down below and I'll take a look at everything you guys have to say. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.